Chances are you've got a jar of honey in your kitchen right now. It's sweet, it's natural, and it's pretty much a staple. But have you ever really thought about how that simple jar represents a huge, complex global industry? How do we get from a single bee on a flower to a massive agricultural enterprise? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. Right, so we all get the basic idea. Bees buzz around, collect nectar, and make honey. Easy enough. But how does that little act of nature scale up to become such a massive, and I mean massive, part of our agricultural world? That's the real question, isn't it? To really get a handle on this, we've got to start with the fundamentals. So let's kick things off by defining what we're even talking about and get our terms straight. Okay, first up, the official name for beekeeping is apiculture. It's really just the science and art of managing honeybee colonies, usually in those man-made hives you see. And what's the goal? Well, it's pretty straightforward, to harvest honey and, just as importantly, beeswax. It sounds simple, but this practice is incredibly powerful. So why is apiculture so valuable, especially for farmers? One of the biggest reasons is that it's actually pretty cheap to get started. You don't need a massive investment, which makes it a fantastic way for farmers to generate extra income. They can add it right alongside their other work. And they get two amazing products out of it: that delicious honey we all love, and beeswax, which is super valuable in everything from cosmetics to medicines. Of course, you can't have beekeeping without, well, the bees. They're the stars of the show, the tiny workforce that makes this entire industry possible. So let's meet the key players. Now, you might think a bee is a bee, but there are actually lots of different kinds. In a country like India, for instance, you've got local varieties like the Indian bee or the rock bee. But when it comes to commercial, large-scale honey production, there's one bee that has become a global superstar, the Italian bee, or Apis mellifera. And there's a very good reason for that. This chart really lays out why the Italian bee is the go-to choice. On one side, you've got your local bees. They're native, they do a solid job. But then you look at the Italian bee, wow, the list of desirable traits just keeps going. They collect way more honey, they're a bit more chill and sting less, they tend to stick around the hive, and they breed like crazy. If you're running a business, those qualities make the Italian bee the clear winner. All right, so you've got the right bees, but where do you put them? And what do they eat? This brings us to the really practical side of things, the actual science behind running a bee farm. First things first, the home base. The proper term for a bee farm is an apiary. It's just a fancy word for any place where beehives are kept. You can think of it as the beekeeper's headquarters. And now for the food. This is where a crucial concept called pasturage comes into play. Pasturage is simply all the flowers and plants that are available for the bees to collect nectar and pollen from. Essentially, it's the bees' local restaurant menu. And here's what's so incredible. That menu is everything. The specific type of flower a bee visits directly changes the taste, color, and quality of the honey. You can get clover honey, which is light and sweet, or buckwheat honey, which is dark and has this really strong, earthy flavor. It's all about the pasturage, so the kinds of flowers and how many of them there are ultimately determine how much that honey is worth. Okay, so we've got the right bees, we've set up their home, and we've got their food source figured out. Now let's bring it all home and talk about the payoff, the economic side of all this. This quote right here really nails it. Beekeeping isn't just a quaint hobby anymore. It has truly evolved into a full-blown agricultural enterprise. We're talking about a serious business that supports livelihoods and contributes to the economy. So let's just stop and think about that for a second. We've established that it's a low-cost business that creates some really valuable products. But how exactly does this translate into real-world support for farmers and their families? And here's the bottom line. First, farmers get valuable honey they can sell. Second, they get beeswax, another product in high demand. Together, these create a stable, extra source of income that didn't cost a fortune to set up. And maybe best of all, it fits perfectly into a system of sustainable, integrated farming, making their entire operation stronger and more resilient. So when you zoom out, you see that beekeeping is about so much more than just a sweet treat. It's a really important piece of the sustainable agriculture puzzle. It helps improve our food resources while directly supporting the people who grow our food. And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. We've seen how this simple, ancient practice can have such a huge positive impact today. It really makes you wonder what other smart, sustainable farming ideas are out there just waiting to be embraced to help secure our food for the future. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.